So I got involved when Megan contacted me to help out with writing services for the week. And she also wanted somebody to help with the media. So I jumped on board right away because I thought it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And we kind of met a couple times up until that week, and it was all, of course, hush-hush. You know, there's a project name. We couldn't actually call it by what it was, which it was fun because it made it more top secret and you felt like you were part of something. And it was a lot of long days and many hours in a row, but there was just something about it. It was the adrenaline and just kind of pushing through and knowing that you were doing something that was so much bigger than yourself, and you were just one part coming together with everybody else. And I've met so many people who were part of the team that I never actually got to meet that week, because there are so many people doing their own part in kind of their area. So that just kind of showed me how many people it took to come together to make this happen. So as a writer in the community, I was just kind of getting started with my own business, and I think the most valuable lesson that I learned is about volunteerism and just kind of giving of yourself and giving that time. There were so many people that wanted to volunteer but maybe couldn't because they were working, or maybe could only volunteer a couple of hours. And I just feel very fortunate that I was able to volunteer for the entire week and to just be there through that whole process and to see it come together hour by hour. So one morning I was hanging out at the media tent helping with some of the TV crews, and these two little boys came over, and I would say they were about 5 or 6 years old, and they came up to us and they were just asking if they could donate their allowance. Basically, they had their piggy banks with them and they wanted to donate the money to help the Grommesh family. And they weren't looking for any attention or anything like that, but we got on the radios and all of a sudden everybody on the build site heard about these two little boys. So Daryl came over, and then he, I think, brought 2 white hard hats, which, again, everybody wanted the white hard hats, so those were very sought after. So kind of rare to have on the build site, and these 2 little boys were going to get these hard hats. But what they didn't know is that Paulie had heard also. He was on the radio, or was next to somebody who had a radio, and he was in the house shooting a scene, and when he heard about these little boys who wanted to donate money, he came out of the house right away, came over to the spectator area, and just got down on their level and asked them their names and asked them why they wanted to help and what they had with them that day. And he signed their hard hats and put them right on their little heads, and I tell you what, those 2 little boys were just speechless, and so many of us were holding back tears because it was just something that was so unexpected but wonderful, because here these little boys were trying to do something nice, and they weren't asking for attention, but they really got thanked in a very unique way, and that's definitely something that I know that they will never forget. So one of my favorite memories from the build site really has very little to do with the build site itself, but what happened was Elmo was in town for Sesame Street Live, and so he made a stop by the build site because the TV news crew was going to be interviewing people from our build site for their morning show. But Elmo also kind of wanted in on the action to promote their show as well, because they were there that weekend. So the people came in, and one of the things that I learned about being on the build site is communication is key. And if there's something big going on, you know, the people want to know, basically. So if I know some information, I felt like I should pass it along. And I knew that Elmo, the giant Elmo, would be coming out of this tent in his costume. And I think it was about 4:30 in the morning or something like that. And a lot of these people had been on the build site for hours, so they're overnight, you know, they haven't slept. And I thought, I'm gonna have to notify, you know, the crew that Elmo is gonna be walking out of this tent, because I don't want them to think like they're seeing things or drop a hammer or fall off a piece of machinery or something like that. So I found one of the project managers on the build site, and again, he's been up all night. Okay, so he sees me coming, and usually I'm bugging him for media requests, and I said to him, I just want you to know that Elmo is going to be coming out of the tent behind me in a couple of minutes. And he said, Elmo, like puppet Elmo? And I said, no, like big Elmo. Because again, we hadn't slept all week, so these are the ways that we're using to communicate. And he said, okay. And I said, well, I thought you'd want to know to let everybody else know just in case, you know. So I kind of explained that, and he got on the radio and he said, just so you guys know, Elmo's going to be coming out of the tent, whatever. And then he's like, thanks. And I thought some of the guys might think that it was kind of lame, or, you know, they wouldn't really be into Elmo. And as soon as the TV interview with Elmo was done, so many of the guys came off of the build site, still wearing their hard hats and their work clothes and everything. And they came over and they wanted pictures with Elmo or of Elmo, or they wanted autographs. And what was so sweet is that they were texting their kids at home or emailing their kids so that when their kids woke up that morning, they could see that Dad got to meet Elmo or Mom got to meet Elmo. And it was just one of those hilarious, crazy moments that you couldn't plan, and I certainly didn't see coming, but it's one of my favorite stories from that week.